Hello, everyone, and welcome to another interview with me, AJ. I am here with Alexander Clark, right?
That's right.
Okay, I was gonna say I totally I saw the name and I was like, okay, I'm gonna remember that name, and I minimized my email and I'm like, forgot the name.
It's all right. I almost said too that I usually go by Alexander, not Alex. So good one.
Yeah. From Space Slurpies, excuse me, made by Starcade Arcade. Wow. I had my morning coffee and apparently it stuck around. It didn't go all the way down. It is a VR, I guess I'll let you describe it, but from my point of view, Space Slurpees is like a VR version of that. What was the game called? It was big like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
It was like one of those .ios. It was like Snake.io or something like that.
Slither.io.
Yeah, Slither.io.
And then, of course, Nokia had Snake, and I think there's been a lot of variations through the years.
So basically, kind of take us through what is Space Slurpees?
Sure. Yeah, Space Slurpees is a virtual reality game. It's more in the arcade category, meaning that it's meant to be very simple and easy to play. In fact, the idea came out of pre-COVID. We were visiting a lot of game conventions and we were showing people our different games. And one of the observations was that there's so much to do and interact with in VR that usually the most successful experiences were the simple ones. And so my co-founder, Brandon, and I were trying to think through simple game concepts that we loved that hadn't bridged over to VR, and that's when we remembered Snake. Everybody loves, controlling the snake, trying not to hit yourself, and eating different things. And we thought, this could be an incredible experience to bring into VR because you have three dimensions of directions that you can go to and control a snake. And then, of course, the next thing we said is it also has to be multiplayer because who wouldn't love to play that with their friends? And so that's how Space Slurpees was born, a multiplayer Snake in VR game.
It's funny that you referenced the Nokia Snake. Like, there's two things that people remember from that phone. A, the fact that it could probably survive a nuclear blast. And B, that Snake came on it. Like, nothing else, nobody cared anything else about that phone other than it's going to last forever. And it's got a really fun game on it. I feel like that's one of those things the McDonald's arches, right? Like, it doesn't matter the language that you speak or where you were raised or, even necessarily when you were born. Like, you see one of those Nokia brick phones and that thing is a tank and it's got Snake, and that's the only thing people know about it.
That's right. I actually love how you point out that it doesn't matter where you're from or what language you speak, because that is actually a heavy factor that went into this. We had gone to a game convention in particular in South Korea and met so many people that either didn't speak English or didn't want to speak English, and it made it hard for us to show off our game to them. Right? When I go back, I'd love to learn some Korean and bridge the gap a little bit more on my side. But in the meantime, we asked ourselves, we're like, is there a universal game mechanic or something very simple that we could show regardless of your background or your language? And so I just think that's really interesting you bring that up, because that is essentially what we're trying to create, that international iconic experience that really anybody could enjoy.
Oh man, it's an interesting day for an interview. You've got sirens in the background. My dog just knocked over an empty Gatorade bottle.
Well, Houston is in an ice apocalypse.
Well, I was
non-stop sirens.
Yeah, I was going to say, you in one of the emails you mentioned that you were down in Houston. I guess we'll take a side tangent here. Like, how bad is it? I've seen photos from Dallas where, apartment complexes, the pipes are exploding and freezing hallways and all that.
Yeah.
Like, how bad is Houston?
It's pretty bad. Just within my circle of friends and family, I know so many people that have been without power for days, been without clean water for days. My own parents, I think they went for 2 days without power before they came over to my place for some warmth and sharing some of the water. And all of the roads and the streets are just covered in ice. And I know people up north or in colder places might think this is a little bit odd since it's only like, a few inches of snow and some icy roads. But you have to keep in mind two things. One, Texans aren't used to driving on ice unless they live in far west Texas or somewhere north. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is our infrastructure was just not built for this. And that's like, all the pipes and the power lines and everything's failing because it wasn't designed to be in this type of weather. And so it's like the city's just falling apart.
Well, and it astounded me when I heard that, like, people were having issues with heat. I'm like, why wouldn't you have insulation? Like, I guess, the vast majority of people think that insulation keeps you warm. But it also keeps the heat out. So it's one of those things where it's like Mike and I both live in the Midwest, so we're like, okay, yeah, you need insulation because, yes, it gets cold in the winter. But it helps keep kind of that muggy heat out in the summer as well. So I'm like, man, there's a lot of oversight in, I guess it would be undersight in Texas, but it's one of those things too where the family that I have in Texas, the one is originally from Michigan, and then his wife is from Texas, and it's been so interesting to see kind of the, I guess, adaptation of his, like, he knows how to drive in the snow. He used to know how to drive in the snow and the ice, and kind of how that disappears when you don't need it. And it's like, you bring up like the ice and stuff, and it's like you start to think about it and you go, okay, their roads are designed for extreme heat,
right?
So getting an infrastructure real quick, the tarmac that you use is, you can engineer it for temperature swings. And so in Texas, where it gets hot, or any really desert state, it's designed to expand. It's not designed to contract. And that's one of the issues we have in Michigan is we get such severe, yesterday when I woke up, it was 2 below zero. We will have days where it hits 100 Fahrenheit, and you can't design something to survive that. It just won't. So, yeah, on top of nobody knowing how to drive in the ice, because everybody's on summer tires, too.
Yeah.
Roads are just...
know there was such a thing as tires that can go on ice and snow.
Well, so that's the thing, right? Like, there really aren't ice tires. There are snow tires. Basically, ice tires have studs in them, and I think there's only 2 or 3 states, maybe. Alaska definitely allows them. I think Minnesota does, and one of the Dakotas does as well. But they're not widely used. There's no cure-all for driving on ice. It's one of those things that it's super, super scary because
a couple times.
Oh, trust me, I've been doing it for over 10 years now. It's
still scary.
It's still scary because it's not like hydroplaning where you can kind of see the water. You can see the water coming and get ready for it. Ice you can't see. So all of a sudden you've got nothing. And at least with hydroplaning, you can kind of use the tires with the grooves in them to move a little bit. On ice, you make any adjustment and you're just spinning around. And you're like, okay.
Right. Well, I hope to not experience that. I'm just staying in my apartment, and
Yeah.
hopefully, if I suddenly cut out, it's because the power went out again, or I lost internet. And the other
Yeah.
day, I didn't even have reception. Who knows what they're doing at the cell towers?
Well, I was
So,
gonna say that, like, I understand the rolling blackouts and kind of that, but the cellular disruption would be something that would kind of freak me out more than losing power. Because losing power
yeah,
is like, okay, it's going to be down. You know, there's precautions you can take. You can get a generator. You can get, batteries, things like that. You can't get a backup cell tower.
I know. No, I agree. That was the weirdest part was waking up and going, all right, no internet, that's fine. No power later, that's fine. But then when you look at your phone and it says no signal, you suddenly go, wait, how do I get a hold of anybody to make
Yeah.
sure that they're okay? How would they let me know?
Yeah, and nobody's got landlines anymore.
Right. Yeah, nobody does. So
But
it's been an interesting past couple of days, that's for sure.
back to the game,
Yeah.
Space Slurpies. So, we've kind of talked around what this game is. It's a VR. I want to say the game is called Slither.io, or it was either Slither or Snake.io.
Slither.io
Okay.
is the way I'm thinking of. Yeah.
I was like, it's one of those. I can't remember. I just remember it was huge for like 3 weeks, and then there was like a dedicated fan base, and that's the last I ever heard about it.
Yeah, I think there is still a dedicated fan base.
I'm
I
sure
went to
there
Party
is.
City a couple weeks back, and I saw that they had Slither.io party hats and paper
Oh,
plates.
boy.
It's like, all right, good for you. That's awesome.
So what? I mean, that game is a 2D game, and you control it with your finger or your mouse.
Right.
How are you moving your, I guess, snake in this
Yeah.
space?
So being a VR game, the most intuitive way to control the snake would be to use your hand. And the head of the snake essentially goes where your hand or where your controller would be. And so wherever you move your hand, the snake moves as well. And then the rest of the body just trails behind it. Now, if you actually start to think about it, this is one of the more interesting game mechanics that deviates from previous experiences because if you remember, with all iterations of the various versions of Snake on the Nokia and, as we said, Slither.io, the game environment controls the speed. Sometimes it speeds up the longer you get or the more levels there are. Sometimes you get a little boost and things like that. But it's always a very controlled speed. In our game, it's not because we couldn't have it so that you control the game controlled the speed because it's attached to your hand. So your hand controls the speed of the snake. And I think that's one of the more interesting factors because you may want to move your snake slowly and carefully, or maybe you want to move it faster. It's a little bit of a risk if you move it faster because you could run into different obstacles, whether it's another snake, the environment, or there's these little baddies that show up. But at the same time, if you move too slow, you're not going to eat enough and grow long enough to win the game. So it's an interesting balance between the two.
That's so okay. It's controlled by your hand. Do you have to use the? I guess best word for it is trigger on the controller. Are you like dragging? Are you clicking and dragging, or is it just like a? I guess fluid.
You don't have to use any buttons at all. It
Okay.
just is fluid. It just follows your hand. It's like imagine you had a really long sock and you were dragging it underwater. That's a little bit what it feels like. The way it just trails behind, and that sensation is one of the reasons that players that have tried out the demo and played it. They're calling it interesting adjectives like relaxing and therapeutic, which you might not expect to hear with a game, but it makes sense because it's just a very action. Wherever your hand goes, the snake goes.
Yeah, yeah. I guess that would be kind of, it's funny to think about, right? Like VR has never had better chance at solidifying its spot than in the past, what, we're coming up on a year.
Yeah.
Like, this is very much a, like, when mainly the US opens back up, like, fully, or as full as it will be, that will be the point where we see, like, okay, is VR truly going to succeed? Because, we saw this sudden surge that I don't think a lot of people were expecting. I definitely wasn't. In, like, April of last year, of, you couldn't find a VR headset. Doesn't matter which one it was. Right? Like, people were just buying into it no matter the cost. And I was like, man, this is interesting.
Definitely.
Yeah. And it's funny, I feel like the VR experiences that harken back to kind of not the original VR from like the 80s and 90s, but the first gen consumer VR, so like the Vive and the first Rift, where it was a lot of like drawing experiences or similar, like the ones that are going to succeed, much like Space Slurpies, it's simple, it's easy to explain.
Yeah, I'd agree, and it is a little bit more casual.
Yeah, I think it's not like Pavlov, where like you need to understand, like, okay, Counter-Strike in VR, but kind of cranked up to 11. Yeah. This is just like, oh, put your headset on, wave your arm around. You can figure it out pretty quickly.
Yep, definitely. But I think that's what a lot of people are looking for with a VR experience, because VR is, in a sense, escapism. Yeah. And so what we found from a lot of people that we talked to is they don't want to spend a lot of time on a huge learning curve. They want to go in, relax, jump right into an experience. That's something we took as a big learning from some of our previous games. And that's why it's something we wanted to address in this game, to give that type of experience.
It's very cool that, more and more experiences are kind of going the way of Space Slurpees, things that are easy to understand, because you would expect, right, this is year, like 6 or 7 for VR. So we would expect to start seeing, like, Alex's and Pavlov's and things like that coming out, where you are comfortable with the system, the controls, and now they're going to exploit kind of your familiarity with the system. Instead, we're still getting those, but, we're also getting these introduction experiences. So it's kind of following, like, I would have expected VR to go so much into the hardcore scene, because, especially on the PC side, until the Quest 2 or whatever it's called, that it's now become reasonably affordable. It was such a investment into VR that you're only going to get hardcore fans. So I would just assume naturally that we would go more hardcore, like Boneworks, which I think is still ahead of its time. Games like that not only use the systems, but exploit not only the system being like the VR system, right, but also exploit like the idea of room scale, of you being able to walk around and things like that and move. I would have expected that, but I am genuinely surprised and happy that it is being bolstered by these things that keep coming out that are easy to grasp, because video games they're kind of hard to get into. Like, there are games that you can just hand somebody a controller, sit in front of a TV and be like, play Madden, you'll figure it out instantly.
Yeah.
Whereas, if you handed them the controller and it was Dark Souls, your
Right.
TV would very quickly have a, controller-sized hole in it.
Yeah.
VR was kind of feeling like it was going to go that route.
And I think it's even worse in VR, that like learning curve. One of the best examples I can give would be like my experience with Skyrim in 2D versus VR. When you pick up Skyrim for the first time, it's a game that basically anybody can play, right? If you can control the thumbsticks on your PlayStation or Xbox just like you would any first-person shooter, okay, you pick up bow and arrow and, you can hack and slash, clicking. I think it's pretty easy to navigate. And I had already played it in the Pancake 2D version, of course, being the classic game that it is. So you would think once I got Skyrim in VR, it'd be super easy for me to pick up and play again. I'd literally already played the game before. But suddenly trying it in VR, I was overwhelmed with the controls and trying to find the different buttons while I'm in the virtual space. And I think a lot of people feel that way. Like once they get into VR, it's just such a new experience, fumbling around with controls and UI and trying to learn it becomes more burdensome than it does with even the other game mediums. And we saw this very clearly. Our first game was in the category of, I think, what you call the more hardcore games. Star Blazer is a space strategy game, and us, like you, figured, okay, VR is maturing. It's about time that we offer some in-depth content, so we wanted to make a real-time strategy game. But it was so much. We were constantly stripping out controls because it was too much for people to learn, and I think that's a byproduct of the medium. And so we scaled that back and got it to a place where it was intuitive and lowered the learning curve, but that's when we wanted to try our hand at an even more simple, casual game like Space Slurpies.
It's funny that you call Skyrim a classic game. Like, I remember when that came. It's coming up on, I think this year's the 10-year anniversary. And to think of something that is only 10 years old as being a classic,
Yeah. Well,
makes me feel old. Like, it makes me feel old.
Consoles, it counts, and
Yeah.
it's one of those games that when the Switch comes out, Skyrim soon to follow. It's just everything will get it. It's earned that legacy status.
I feel like
even at less than 10 years.
I feel like there's maybe 3 or 4 I would consider modern, quote unquote, modern games that could be considered classics. It's Skyrim. My view on Skyrim is well documented on the podcast, but to give a brief overview, I think it's a extremely overrated experience. Grand Theft Auto 5 is considered, it'll be a classic because that'll come out on whatever Elon Musk builds on Mars. Like, that will just be there.
Yeah.
And then I really think, I guess it's kind of different since they remastered it, but, like, the original Call of Duty Modern Warfare, like, people would still go back to that. You could still find lobbies of that pre the remaster coming out. Even though it was, at that point, 7 or 8 games behind. Like, that's one of those games that will still be considered a classic. Because it's, I feel like those three games kind of, while they weren't necessarily the first, really popularized either a genre or a control scheme. Like, Call of Duty Modern Warfare that's the one game you can point to that everybody now follows that control scheme. Right? Left trigger aim, right trigger shoot, left bumper one of your grenades, right bumper the other. Like, everybody follows that control scheme now. Skyrim really, I guess, popularized the best way to describe it is a podcast game. Right? Like, that's a game that you can just play with something else going on and to keep you entertained because there's a lot of downtime. And
Yeah.
GTA just popularized, like, kind of the casual. I was going to say casual murder simulator, but that sounds deeply depressing. Kind of that casual, like, it's a game that anybody can get into and have fun from the get go. Right?
Yeah.
It doesn't require any lead up time, any build up time. It's like boom, you get into it, you're having fun. And now, basically post those games coming out, you've seen, a lot of games either in the way of Call of Duty adapting the control scheme, or there are a lot of open world games. I think you can look at basically anything Ubisoft's released in the past 6 years. Those games are like Skyrim style of podcast games. There's just so much downtime in between like the main things that it lets you kind of relax and do other things.
Yeah.
And
what do you think are some gameplay defining games within VR? Are there any that you'd point to immediately?
I would point to Pavlov because that was one of the first games that came out, like, of those, the hardcore shooter games.
Yeah.
I guess Hot Dogs, was it Hot Dogs? Horseshoes, hand grenades, and hot dogs, whatever. However, H3, however it's written out. That is one that I want to say came out with the original Vive, still updated to this day, and it's very much a lot of games are built on kind of the back of H3's success of just getting you in and just physics. It's a physics game essentially, right? It's got guns, yes, but it's all about grabbing. It's as realistic as it can be.
Yeah.
While you're holding, whatever controller. And I don't think I can point to maybe 11, but like the sports games. Like, I guess 11 is kind of the one that's been around the longest of like just intuitive sports games.
Yeah, I can see those.
So, if we were limiting it to 3, I would say those 3, but kind of the more modern ones, the Until You Fall, that game really, like, it teaches you kind of hack and slash in VR very simply. And its mechanics are simple, but it is a tough game, and it's a fun game. We've been covering that game in one form or another for basically since it's been announced. And we met up with them 2 years ago at GDEX in Columbus, Ohio, and we were talking to them, and we're like, yeah, we've been looking at this games, basically since it's existed, and it's really cool to see kind of where it's gone, because that, much like I'm sure Space Slurpies is, like, that is a game that you just plop the headset on, make sure the controllers are cinched down, and just let them go, because it's a game that effectively adapts to your playstyle, or you quickly adapt to it. And I'm sure Space Slurpies, like, even though it's going to be released here and probably by the time near the time this episode goes up, I hope, right, once we get back to conventions, I hope you guys can just bring this and be like, hey,
yeah,
hop in, screw around, even if it's not you. Like,
all right, put on the headset, especially now with Quest. I don't even have to set up a computer. I can just say, all right, put this thing on, figure it out, have fun.
Not even if it's not even like having a quote unquote booth, but a lot of these conventions have a game room or a section where it's not stuff being shown off, it's stuff that's already out and things like that,
right?
And even if you guys were there, like this, I can see, Space Slurpies is one of those games where I can see it just like, I'll be very realistic with you. It's either a flat line or it is straight to the moon. Like, it's either going to go just, like, it's either just going to be, a dedicated small fan base, or it's going to be like the, what's the Price is Right game with the guy climbing up the mountain, the yodel, 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 yodel. It's going to be that.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. It's funny. We've literally said the same thing too. When Brandon and I, that's my co-founder, when we talk about Space Slurpees, we say, okay, it could be a big hit, or it could not be. It could totally flop. Like, definitely, we're not going to, what they say, bet the farm on it. Yeah. We're going to put it out there. Hopefully people love it as much as we do. We'll start on the fourth game if they don't. But, I think it's a 50-50. We laugh and actually see it the same way, too.
Yeah, it's I feel like it's one or the other, right? There's no... Because VR doesn't really allow for kind of that mid section.
Yeah, it's definitely a winner-take-all type of place right now.
And I think that's purely because of the investment needed into, either whether it be a Quest or, a beefy PC and an Index. Like, there is an investment no matter what. And then you get into the game. So there's really not, like, there's no, it's weird to say, right? Like, so the Quest 2 is now cheaper than a console. Yeah. But I still feel like it's kind of out of people's way. Like, more people would be willing to pay the $400 or $500 to get a console than, what is it, $300 or $400 for a Quest.
Yeah.
And would be happy to play on their console. Whereas VR, it's such a... And I think it's just because, like, Oculus and Facebook are doing a fairly decent job of marketing it, but it's still such a, I guess, left field thing, right? It's not...
Right.
It's not normal, quote
People don't
unquote.
think
Normal.
they need VR, and they don't think it's as good as it actually is now, because the videos don't do it justice until you've experienced it.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting because, so I have an Index, I still have a Vive, and, the watching people experience VR for the first time is one of those things that, I mean, I don't have a kid. Hopefully, knock on wood, not for a little while still. It's one of those things that I imagine when parents see their kids do something for the first time. Like, you get this enjoyment out of watching somebody experience what you have experienced, hundreds or thousands of times before.
Definitely.
And you're like, man, like, this is fun to watch, even though you're just watching somebody with what appears to be what is a screen strapped to their face. And you're like, man, this is fun to watch. Like, watching, it's the deer just as it's born, stumbling to get its feet underneath it, and then it gets its feet underneath it, and then it starts to walk, and then it starts to run, and you can watch that progression happen in a matter of tens of minutes, and you're like, okay, this is really cool.
And you can see the joy as they're looking around and experiencing it. No, that part never gets old. I agree. As many conventions as we went to and as many reviews as we have seen, nothing beats that first time VR experience and then watching somebody else go, whoa.
Well, there you go. You've experienced what I can only assume a parent experiences, thousands of times. Sure. You are, may as well. I'm this far. You're a Catholic family. Taken to the nth degree. I say that as somebody that lives in a very religious part of the United States and knows many a Catholic family with a minimum of 5 kids.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I'm like, dude, I have a brother and that's it. I don't know how you would have more than 2 seems like.
Yeah.
Like
I don't know.
that is
Right now, I've got 3 kids: Star Blazer, Virus Popper, and Space Slurpees. That's about all I can handle.
Yeah. I'm like, I can't imagine having. Like at that point, it's an investment. Like a kid's an investment anyway, but like you need to buy a big enough house. You need to buy a big enough vehicle. Like, I'm like, dude, you're just gonna end up driving minivans the rest of your life. I don't like I mean, I'm a car person, so I don't like minivans anyway. But, it's like, man, you are really you're really pigeonholing yourself for the future there. But
That's probably what they say about VR game development too.
well, I mean, that's anything creative, right? Like any project. I mean, I would imagine for the vast majority of people, I'm just kind of heartless in the way that the projects that I've worked on, I don't necessarily care. Right? They're out. People can experience it. It's whatever. I guess that's kind of the nice thing about being heartless, but you no longer care. But yeah, I mean, you've got your babies out there for the world to experience, and it's things you've poured hundreds or thousands of hours into, and it's such a relief when you get something out. And I'm sure, it's weird, right? Because there's not a lot of, in the film world, like, yes, you can go to festivals, but most of the time, the vast majority of projects don't get accepted to festivals, so you're releasing it onto YouTube or Vimeo or whatever.
Yeah.
And so you don't necessarily get that tactile response. Whereas with games, there's conventions all over the world, so you get to see people a little more easily interact with your baby and see kind of the immediate response. So I can only imagine what it's like to have a game out and see people experience it, because I know the feeling when I was reading the comments of one of the videos that I worked on, and they were mostly positive, and kind of I don't even know the right word, like...
Yeah, it's definitely... No, I know the feeling. It's an endorphin rush and a little bit of euphoria. It's that feeling that got us hooked on this. I'll never forget the first convention we went to. It was PAX South 2019, I think. And it was the first time that we had put our game in front of somebody that wasn't like a friend or a family. And we always know that they're going to say nice things, even if it was terrible. Friends and family are always going to be kind. But then seeing people that had no connection to us, had never met us before, enjoy what we had made and come back to it, enjoy it some more, it was so fulfilling. Like there was no feeling like it. And that's when we knew, we said, oh, we've got to do this, and we got to eventually build a path to doing this full time, because we need this high constantly. We want to see how far this can go.
Yeah,
it's a good feeling.
The inner narcissism, suddenly, once you get that success, you're like, I want this.
Yeah, well, don't worry. There's enough negative people out there that get at a level.
I do like your description of the euphoria. I was trying to think of I can only imagine, when you hear descriptions of the high that you experience with a true morphine high, a true what's the base of that? The plant, the poppy plant, like that kind of just outer body experience that you get. Like, that is kind of, in a way, kind of what you feel, right? When something succeeds, you're like, you're literally on cloud nine at that point. Like, you're just so happy to see anybody enjoy the thing that you put your, heart and soul into, because, as you can attest to, I'm sure, like, you've kind of got blinders on when you're making something.
Yeah.
And so you don't, the outside world hasn't seen it. You don't know how the outside world's going to react. You're just working on it. And then finally, it's like that experience of taking the blinders off and letting the horse run around in the open. What does it do? But yeah, it's been, I'll tell you what, it's been very fun talking to you. Space Slurpies is coming out March, let me get this right.
We
19th.
actually have an official date, so you're good.
Planned release date, I should say, on Steam says March 19th.
Yeah.
I would, as I've told everybody in the past year that we've interviewed, I'm like, I think people are a little more accepting if you kind of push stuff back a week or two. You can say whatever you want as the reason for the delay, and people just be like, yeah, sure, whatever.
That's good to know. Well, I'll tell you, the reason is Oculus. We're ready. Just as long as they approve, then we'll get it out.
Well, Oculus, get your ducks in a row, and, you've got all the Facebook algorithms. Just plug it in, and I'm sure Facebook will say people will like it or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Who knows? Well, it was very good talking to you, Alexander, and looking forward to the upcoming release of Space Slurpies.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed it as well. So thanks for reaching out.
This episode is partially brought to you by the Humble Choice program. Did you know Humble Bundle has a great monthly subscription service that lets you get a ton of video games every single month? That's right, from plans range from $5 to $20 a month, you get a hold of a bunch of free games they have available to you. And you can use our code down in the description below to go and sign up. It would help our podcast and help you see what great games are available for you this month.
This podcast was a production of the SWW Show. To learn more, go to theswwshow.com. Remember, you can follow the show on Twitter at the SWW Show. You can follow me at Mikey_Maroney. You can follow AJ at LowSeatBoy. Remember, new episodes premiere on Friday, 9 a.m. Central Time on anchor.fm/SWW and podcast services around the globe.